Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to our next session on SAP UI5 and Fiori training. In the last session, we give a close to our basic fundamental chapter. We have learned by far in last couple of days HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. From today's session onwards, we will start with introduction of SAP UI5. What is SAP UI5? How can we create our first SAP UI5 application? And what is the technology behind SAP UI5? So let's move on and talk about what is SAP UI5. The definition remains the same what we saw already in the demo session. So SAP UI5 is a framework. What is a framework? Framework is a collection of libraries. So SAP UI5 is a framework which is a collection of library, and each library is a collection of classes. This framework was developed by SAP and used by industry to create responsive web application. This is what the main purpose of this framework. The heart of this framework is based out of HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. So if I would like to draw the overall architecture, how UI5 is built, you would see at the bottom of SAP UI5 Foundation, we have the open standards like HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, less, REST, we call it as data.js. We have d3.js. These are all reusable libraries and frameworks. On top of it, SAP UI5 is built upon. These are all the foundation for SAP UI5 framework. Now, in a broader way, the entire framework is divided into two parts. The first part is known as design time component, SAP UI5 design time component. And the second part is known as SAP UI5 runtime component. So what does the design time component does? The SAP UI5 design time component allows us as developers to reuse these libraries offered by SAP. So you can reuse the libraries offered by SAP to build a nice, beautiful application which can run on mobile, tablet, or desktop. On the other side, the runtime component is responsible for execution of your application. So on the design time component side, we have something called libraries. So there are set of core libraries which are part of this component. What are all those core libraries? These libraries are most and they will be loaded by default. Okay. These libraries, you don't have to load them explicitly. They gets loaded automatically. Many of them gets loaded automatically when you start or load SAP UI5 framework first time. These libraries gets loaded almost automatically. The first comes is sap.ui.core library. This is the core library of SAP UI5, which does all the basic tasks. We will see in some time the functions or the classes which are part of this core library, which makes a difference for us. So this gets loaded automatically. Second comes is SAP UI Unified, which is mainly used for upload download features. Then we have SAP UI, SAP UI View Library. This is also a library for loading the views. So likewise, we have a couple of other core libraries as part of SAP UI5 core, which gets loaded automatically. On top of these core libraries, we have control libraries. Those control libraries contains the UI5 controls. Controls as in the button, the text field, the input field, the labels. All the controls are part of control libraries. There are so many control libraries as part of SAP UI5. Some of these major ones which we really use on day-to-day basis: SAP UI.commons. Now, this library has been deprecated since a long time. It's been like more than a year or so. SAP announced deprecation of this library. Deprecation means you should not use this library anymore. This has been deprecated by SAP. And if you have any existing code on this library, you should move that to the libraries which are being in used. The another library which was deprecated by SAP, which is also an important library, Suite.UI Commons. Okay, SAP Suite UI Commons. This was another library which was deprecated by SAP. So why am I telling you about this? Because the reason is some of you are still maybe using unknowingly, knowingly, because there are a lot of internet blogs, and some of you would have unknowingly started using the code from those internet blogs, and those libraries have somehow now being used in your project, which you have to decommission and then continue with the new libraries which we have, or the libraries which are not uh, not in any more or the libraries which are any more applicable. So you have to decommission them and you have to use the new ones. Now coming to the ones which are very important: Sap.M library. This is the library you're going to work day and night with, which is called Sap M. M stands for mobile. Okay, now it doesn't really necessarily mean that when you develop you application using Sap M, it only works with mobile. The name, I'm just telling you the name, don't take interpretation out of what I say. Okay, it is just the name. M means mobile, that's it. It does not mean that you build an app using SAPM, it only works in mobile. No, that's not the meaning. The meaning is the M stands for mobile. That's it, that's it. Bhul jao, baki alawa, baki kuch bhi nahi hai uske alawa. Now next, the next library which we have is sap.ui. Table library, which is also heavily used. Then we have sap.ui.comp library, which is used mainly for smart controls. We have another very powerful library called sap.ui.layout library. Yeah. Likewise, we have SAP Viz library. We have other libraries which we typically want to use. For example, Excel integration. If you want to do native Excel integration, you can use some libraries. So some of these libraries are provided with design time component. So and then on the runtime component, we have server side support libraries, support for server side, and we have something called very powerful component called renderer. This is another very important and powerful component which we have. You don't need to remember these libraries. It's okay to remember, as in when you work day and night with these libraries, you anyway start remembering them. But at least these six which I told you here, they are important. You should keep it in mind. At least not just six: this and this core library and view library. So these libraries you should keep it in mind. These are important ones. These five libraries which I mentioned here, almost every project, some or the other place, you will be seeing those library being used. All right, so what is happening here now? What is the benefit are we getting out of it, and how exactly it works behind the scene? My question to all of you: Does browser understand SAP UI5? Anyone? What does the browser understand directly? SAP UI5. Does browser understand? No, browser don't understand SAP UI5. Browser understand HTML, CSS, JS. This is what only browser understand. Point one. So what you got to do to make the browser understand the SAP UI5? You have to first load, like jQuery, you have to load the SAP UI5 framework in the browser. Okay, so how do you do? What are all those two techniques? One is reference and one is another is load from CDN. So this is the step number one. When we start any application, we have to load SAP UI5 libraries which are coded in JavaScript as part of this, just like the way you've been loading jQuery yesterday. Similarly, you got to load SAP UI5 framework first of all in the browser. Step number one. Now step number two, you will be writing some piece of code by using SAP UI5 design time component. I call it as DT, design time component. SAP UI5 design time component, you have used some library from SAP UI5 design time component, and now you have written some piece of code. So you're writing some piece of code here. Now browser don't understand that code. So who will bridge, who will fill this gap? Taking your code, understanding your code and converting that code which browser understand, which means converting your entire code to HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Who is that gentleman who is responsible for doing? Because whatever you're writing, browser don't understand directly. So who will convert your code to the necessary HTML, CSS and JS code which browser understand? That's what SAP UI5 runtime component does. Don't forget, this is a very important slide. If you forget this slide, you will never ever understand SAP UI5. Never in your life you will be able to understand SAP UI5, how it works, what is happening behind the scene. So what happens is, there is a component called SAP UI5 runtime engine, and this has something called renderer component. What this renderer does, इसका नाम ही renderer है, इसका ना जिसका नाम ही renderer है. Okay, so its name itself is renderer. What does the renderer does exactly? A renderer is responsible for converting your code to equivalent HTML, CSS and JavaScript code. That's part of SAP UI5 runtime engine, and it is what responsible to convert your code to HTML, CSS, JS code. Once it does, browser understand now this. Clear everyone? What's happening behind the scene? You first loaded SAP UI5 framework, so this runtime component also got loaded. Now you've written using, once it's loaded, you use design time libraries to code, and once the code is ready, you submit and you execute. When you execute, the renderer of runtime component converts this code to equivalent HTML, CSS, JS code which browser understand directly. Is this flow clear everyone? Are you all clear what is renderer doing here? Browser don't understand Java, browser don't understand ABAP, browser don't understand WebDin Pro, browser don't understand UI5, browser don't understand Perl, Python, Ruby, VB.NET, ASP, JSP. It does not understand anything. ब्राउजर ओनली एंड ओनली अंडरस्टैंड HTML, CSS एंड JavaScript. उसके अलावा उसे कुछ नहीं समझ में आता है. This is the only thing. So if you want to talk to a guy who only understands Chinese, what you have to do? Anyone? If you want to talk to a guy who only and only understands Chinese, you have to learn Chinese or you have to use a translator. So we don't want to learn. We have learned Chinese already. In this case, we have learned already the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. However, plus we have also have a translator here who is doing what? Who is converting your code and translating it to what browser understand. Is that clear, guys? What is happening behind the scene? This is what exactly happens when you use UI5. And when you loading this UI5 framework, this framework includes both of these runtime and design time components. You don't have to say, hey, load my runtime component, load my design time. You don't have to do that. You are saying, hey, load the framework. A framework includes itself both design time and runtime component. So let's go into the system and write once again, or maybe see the code which we have written in the demo class. So the very first thing which we did in the demo class was we have actually loaded SAP UI5 framework. So now coming to the definition, this is another very important interview question. What is Bootstrap? Pakka 100% interview question. What is Bootstrap? Can anybody tell me what is Bootstrap? Yesterday also I talked about it. Anyone who will tell me what is Bootstrap? Anybody? What is Bootstrap?
Initialize
Initialize what? Initialize washing machine?
application. Application.
Libraries, UI5 libraries.
No. UI5 libraries are part of SAP UI5 design time component.
It's binding your SAP HTML files to
No,
your.
no.
It's
If you
about
answer
loading
like this in
UI5
interview,
framework.
guys, if you answer like this in interview, I guarantee you, you will not get selected, even though you know concept. Perfect answer.
Loading.
Ajit has got it right. Look at the word here. Selection of word decides your interview selection. Selection of your words will decide your interview selection. Selection of your words decide your interview selection. It is used to load UI5 framework in the browser. Done. कान को घुमा के पकड़ने का आदत पड़ गया है. Your intellect is what you can use to make simple things complicated and make complicated things simple. Usually we say three things are important in life: body, mind, and intellect. If your body is not supporting you, you can't do anything. You can't do anything if your body doesn't support you. So first thing is making the body right. You got to exercise 45 minutes morning, evening. Very important to keep you get going. If your stomach is tight, guarantee you that you can't learn anything in life. You can't concentrate on work if your body is not supporting you. The first primary focus is body. Then comes his mind. What is the state of your mind? You can't be excited all the time. You can't be depressed all the time. The biggest mistake and wrong decisions which you have taken in your life were taken either at the time of excitement or at the time of deep depression. So you should be in a normal state. You should never ever be so much excited, and you cannot be all the time excited, cannot be all the time depressed. But if you look back your life, you will observe the most difficult or most wrong, incorrect decisions were taken in life when you were too much super excited or you were depressed too much. The third thing is intellect. Intellect is just you can use to make complicated things simple. That's what intellect does. Buddhi, हिंदी में बोलते हैं बुद्धि. Buddhi is what you can use to convert a complicated thing to simple or a simple thing to complicated. What is that you're using your intellect for? Look at here, SAP UI5 framework. The bootstrap is used to load UI5 framework. That's it. No need to say it's loading libraries, it's loading this, it's loading that. Simple one word, simple definition which you can understand. And now the now you are driving your interview. Now your interviewer will ask you what is framework. The answer of that is collection of libraries. Then he will say, what is library? Library is a collection of class. SAP UI5 offers different libraries like M, table, and core, and other libraries, which includes classes to write the code. Then he say what happens when you execute that code. It then SAP UI5 runtime component comes into picture, which has a renderer engine, and this renderer converts your code to equivalent HTML5 and CSS code. कितना simple है. You are driving your interview. Interviewer is thinking he or she is driving, but you are driving your interview. That's intellect. That's intellect. If you understand this trick in this world, you can crack any interview. Intellect is about making complicated things simple. How are you using your intellect? What is the definition of bootstrap? It is used to load, or your word is also okay, initialize. You can also use initialize. Initialize what? Washing machine? No. It is used to load and initialize SAP UI5 framework. Next question. What are all the two techniques by which you can do that? Anybody? What are all the two techniques to initialize UI5 framework? One is from CDN, directly loading UI5 from CDN, content delivery network. Yesterday I told you, जिसने देखा है कल का PPT वो बता देगा. Which CDN SAP is using to load UI5? Perfect answer, Vaishali. Akamai CDN. Akamai is the company which is used, which is actually partnered with SAP to load SAP UI5 framework. Akamai CDN. Why we use CDN? Because they have data centers across the globe. The loading time can be minimized because a CDN network is distributed across the globe. It is caching those static resources, and whenever there is a need, you don't need to travel all the globe across the globe to load the resources necessarily required. The second way is local reference to load the UI5. There are two ways. So local reference is actually we are using WebID. So WebID has inbuilt UI5 framework which we can use. So right now we will move to Akamai option, the CDN from Akamai, and then we will load SAP UI5. Is that clear, everyone? Simple and short answers will save you. Nobody has time to listen to your big stories. Nobody. Imagine if somebody come to you and telling you big story, will you listen? You will also not listen. Who has time to got to go getting into these long stories? Nobody has. Your answer should be very straightforward, up to the point. Up to the point. That's the trick to get selected. Many times student comes to me, Anubhav, interview was amazing, I knew every single answer which he was asking me, मुझे सब आता था, but still Anubhav, I could not get selected. Why? What is the reason? What is the reason? Reason is your answers. I have no problem. I completely accept the fact that you guys are struggling hard, working hard to achieve it. But thoda sa bolne ka, little bit of way, the way you convey what you know, that is more important. Soon I will also be creating a video, an effective way to become a mentor or a trainer. So by watching those tips, you can become a effective mentor in your company. Okay, I will create that video soon. So there, the first fundamental point, the first important point to keep it in mind is to make yourself effective in your communication. The way you are communicating and expressing yourself, that is the most important thing. Most important thing. If you learn that art, you can do anything. So that's most important. This is the reason why many people doesn't get selected in interview. और अगर कुछ नहीं हो रहा है तो रट लो इसको रट लो, rememberize this statement as it is, because that's why I'm preparing this PPT every day, so that those questions can be put inside and you can remember it. You can by heart these things on your own. If you can't construct, you by heart these things as it is. रट के जाओ इसको, रट्टा मार के जाओ. All right, let's go on. So now we talked about this. So let's go and write our first program. Can't control myself to write our first UI5 program. We already done that. However, let's try it one more time. Just gonna create a new folder and we'll say my UI5 day. And now I'm going to create, always guys, when we create a application in UI5, we always have to follow certain standards. My trainings more or are oriented towards standard. Anybody can write the code, but do you have the confidence on that code, that in code reviews when some experts are looking at your code, will you be able to classify it as a good developer? So that's more important. This is the reason why we do many things just to follow standard. Sometimes you may ask, Anubhav, why did you do this? It was not needed. Can we also do like this? Yes, you can. I'm not saying you cannot do things in another way, but what my intention is to do things so that we can follow industry standard and industry best practice. So you can directly create an index HTML like we did earlier, but the industry practice says you should create in a web app folder. So this is a good practice. Always create your files and folders inside web app, and now inside you're going to create a new file. I'm going to say index.html, and this is also another standard which we should ideally keep it in mind. Index.html is the name of the file which we keep. Okay, you can keep it spiderman.html or your own name, but this industry standard says should be index.html. Let's go ahead and write now. Never copy paste the code, guys. Never ever copy paste the code. And let's write doc type declaration html, and then we have HTML document, and we will have a header of HTML, and then we will have body of HTML. So today I'm writing this code, but tomorrow, since we will be comfortable, I will be copy pasting this code again. I will not be writing again and again. Now the first thing we got to do is we have to now initialize SAP UI5. So we have to say script tag. Very good answer, Harika. She's faster than anybody. Script tag to load any external reference. Script src, and now inside the src here we got to give the path from CDN where we can load UI5 framework. Then additional properties we have to add here to load which library. As I told you, UI5 is flooded with libraries. But if you loading the framework, if you load all the libraries, what will happen? Your performance will be affected, right? If you load all the libraries, what will happen? Your performance will be affected. So what SAP does, SAP says, hey, you load the framework, the necessary core libraries with the framework, and runtime component, which is also mandatory with framework. But you, whatever libraries you need, you tell me, I will load for you. You don't load all libraries because they will affect your performance. In not, there is not a single project till date which use all libraries. Not at all. Do you use all ABAP syntax in a single ABAP program ever? Did you ever used all the ABAP syntax in your single ABAP program ever? Never, na? You never do that. So you load what you need. Why are you making unnecessary loading of everything? So load whatever you need. So we're going to load SAP M Library. That's the most important library in the entire UI5 framework. This I would give a star. Okay, I will give a star to this library. This is the star of our entire course. This is the library we'll be working day and night throughout our entire course, throughout entire weeks, throughout everything. This is the top used library. However, also give a star to this one. This is also used actually, but not as much as SAP M. So I'll give it as another green star probably. And then core library is also a star, which is automatically gets loaded, and it gets used almost everywhere by UI5 processing. So this is the main star of our entire course, which we will be using throughout our things. And this anyway gets loaded automatically. We don't have to load it. And this one, of course, if you need, you got to load it. Now coming back, src property, and then you have to give those properties sap ui hyphen data sap ui lib, sap ui lib, and sap.m. This is what you got to do. And now you have to put a source file https sapui5 dot tools dot hana dot on demand dot com slash sap resources slash sapui core dot js. Now see, it's been such a long time working day and night with UI5. मुझे याद हो गया. I could now remember this entire path. But those who are new, how do you get this path? Where do you get it from? I will discuss it. I will discuss it with you. Okay. So SAP UI5, and now you want to test, you can just copy this URL and paste it in your browser and see something is loading or not. So when I just go and copy paste, oops, it's not working. I think it's tools is not there. Just press enter and you will see something is loading. Yes, you can see UI5 development toolkit for HTML5, It's loading up, and you see it's all JS code, kind of a JS code which is written here. You can see, of course we don't need to really get in to understand this, but just see if it's loading something. This is the right path which we have to use. Clear everybody how to load SAP UI5 framework as part of it. And now we're just going to close this script tag, and let's come back and put here a class name classification, CSS class name SAP UI body. And now guys, why do you think why I put SAP UI body here? Why I put this class? What is the impact of this? Guys, what happens, this UI5 framework also includes CSS, automatic CSS files. It's a framework. A framework is a collection of lots of JavaScript, CSS files, libraries and all that. So it also has a CSS file which gets loaded. Do you remember? If you load an external CSS and if you follow the rules of that CSS, you will get automatically the style, right? We saw that, right? External CSS, where we can reference a CSS externally and it gets you all the features automatically for that CSS. Same thing happens here. I am saying, hey SAP UI5, please load the framework, and I will also say another property, data SAP UI theme, and I will say, hey, can you please load SAP underscore blue crystal theme, which means please load a CSS file which is pertaining to blue crystal theme. And accordingly, what will happen, since I've given a class name here, system will be loading or making the style applied on the body level, which means entire page background color will change to blue color as per the blue crystal theme. Save this, just run this and see what happens. So I'm going to execute this, and now let's come back and press F12. F12 is your best friend. Can you see a little blue color screen at the background, which indicating that SAP UI5 is loaded successfully, because otherwise background blue nahi hota. SAP UI5 was loaded and its theme also got applied. That's why the background turned into blue. This is an indicator that it's loaded. However, you can come to sources and check. Now you see guys, there are some errors which are coming here. You see server responded status 4.4 or app cache buster index file from something it's giving. Ignore these errors right now. Ignore. Coming to sources, and now here you will see that SAP HANAOnDemand.com. From here SAP resources were loaded, and if you just go inside, SAP M Library was loaded. Clear everyone? And then SAP UI app base core, these core libraries, these are core libraries. SAP UI base, core, DOM, events, model, performance, security, third party util. Lot of these libraries are loaded, but important is SAP M got loaded. SAP M library got loaded, and it has lots of these classes. See, action list item, buttons, you see button class will be there. See button class here, this is the button class got loaded. Busy indicator, checkbox class got loaded. All these are controls. Okay, these are all the controls. So where are we giving Akamai reference? We don't have to take care of it. Whenever a request is going, this will go to an Akamai server by default. Okay, and this Akamai server is connected to main data center of SAP, where UI5 is deployed. UI5 framework is built by SAP and deployed. So this routing is automatic. You don't have to worry about it. From developers point of view, just understand this is going to Akamai server by default. We don't have to do anything. Okay. Now SAP M got loaded. We have seen everything got loaded, and that's the reason you see background color is changed to blue color, because I have said, okay, this is the code. And now somewhere in SAP UI5, remember, there is some code written like this. Okay, there is some kind of CSS code written like this: background color equals to light blue. Something like this is written. This piece of code is written inside this theme file of SAP UI5. That's why you see light blue color of the background. Okay, now let me show you a nice thing. I will just go and change, and I'll change it to high contrast. Okay, I'm not sure if it is correct name, but let's try. I just refresh. No, it is not. So let me just check SAP high contrast. black theme. Yeah. So I'll just change the theme name and I'll just find the what is the name of the theme which SAP provides for high contrast black, and just let me just try to see. You see, this is how it will look like. It's a blue crystal high contrast black theme. You see, this is how a black theme looks like. What is the theme name? HCB. It's the theme name is HCB. Let's come and put that here. SAP underscore HCB. You will see entire page background color will change to black. See, are you clear, guys? What is the theme doing? Entire page background color got changed with HCB theme. When you load, it loads that CSS file which brings an HCB. Clear, everyone? That's what happens. HCB theme. SAP blue crystal I'll make. And let's come back. You will see now the blue crystal as the background theme. So that's what happening now. Based on the theme you choosing, it's loading the right CSS file accordingly. And now we're gonna write our first application. So remember the syntax which I told you in the demo. Var create a variable. Everything is an object. You got to create a button object. Let's say obtn equals to new keyword sap.m library. It has a button class. Let's put a button. And now inside this button we're gonna put id of the button, id btn, comma curly braces. Sorry, this code should go all in script. It's a JavaScript code, so it should go in the script here. So I'm just putting a script tag, and we're gonna put that code. Button curly braces, and now here inside this button property like press, what should happen when user press? What will be my text of the button? So let's put a text property, and I'll say, hey, can you please click me? And I'll say press. I'm writing an function. And can anybody tell me what is this function called in JavaScript? Anyone? What is this function called in JavaScript? It's called anonymous function. Perfect answer. Santosh has got it right. Anonymous function. Santosh, how I hope you are checking my PPT every day. Thank you so much for that answer. Because he is looking at this PPT, I have already told here in PPT number 30. Anonymous function. Those who are not looking at my PPT every day or not creating notes, you will slowly forget everything. Everything you will slowly forget. You will not remember anything at all. Session number 25, 26, by the time will reach, you will lose the interest in the course because it will go beyond your boundary. And that time you will see your fellow students, they will be keep rocking in their company. By that time they will start building complicated to complicated Fiori applications and deliver those results in their companies, their respective companies. They will get exponential growths in their careers in coming March, coming new financial year closing. They will get a tremendous hike this year because of their learnings. And that time you will realize अनुभव सही बोलता था. Guys, kill the time before time kills you. You got to kill the time before time kills you. You got to utilize it. ये वक्त दोबारा नहीं आएगा. It will not come. This time will not come. Only 2 months I'm asking of your time. Only 2 months you give it to me. This 2 months is going to last an effect for next 5 to 6 years. Your career will be built on these 2 months. How you take these 2 months will decide your next 5 to 6 years of your career. Okay, coming back, function, and I'm gonna write an alert. Yeah, you can write a window dot alert also. Yes, and I say, hey, welcome to SAP UI5. Yeah, this is something which we did already in demo. No rocket science, something we already did. And now to place this button into the body of HTML, we got to create, let's say, div, and I'll just give an ID for this div element, and I say Anubhav, and I'm just gonna go back and I say button. Please take this button, my button object dot place this button into the body of HTML where you have Anubhav. Okay, this is what we have done. So we have placed now into the body, and let's save this up and let's come back. You're gonna see a nice button on the UI. Let's talk side by side. So I'm just going to talk side by side. Refresh. Oops, it's not coming. Something is wrong. Guys, when something goes wrong, what is that you're gonna do? Yes, console is your best friend. Let's come to the console and check it out. You can see there is an uncaught syntax error, unexpected identifier, line number 13. Can you see how console helps me? Whenever there is an error comes, console is telling the file and the line number where there is an unexpected identifier. Are you guys clear? What is the issue? How can you identify issue? Let's see. Click here on this line. Let me maximize. And you see there is a problem here in the press part. This is the line which is culprit. Can you guess what is that I'm missing? Anyone? Can you guess? Perfect answer. GK has got the right answer. We missed a comma here after the text property. We missed a comma after the text property. That's the problem. You see here there's a comma which is missing. Let's put a comma because every property name colon property value, property name colon property value, or event name colon function. That's what you got to give. Save this up, refresh, and voila, there you go. You can see your button coming up on the top. Click on that and welcome to SAP UI5. I hope it's clear, guys, what's happening behind the scene. So this is the design time library which you used. You have written a code you are giving for execution. Then SAP UI5 runtime component comes into picture, which has a renderer engine renderer, and this renderer is converting this code to equivalent HTML5. Where can you see that equivalent HTML5 code which is produced by renderer? Where can you see the equivalent HTML5 code which is produced by HTML? Perfect answer. Go to the DOM. DOM is your runtime representation of HTML. ये देखो ये बना दिया. Wow. You can see a div element Anubhav. Inside that you see a button was created. The ID of the button is IDBT, and that's exactly which I gave. DOM is your best friend again. DOM is what you can see now. This is the generated code. See how much deep level nesting it has done. And there you have the button label inside. Finally, this is the DOM. This is the HTML. This is the DOM. This is the HTML which is generated by whom? Who generated this DOM? Who generated this runtime HTML structure? Who generated? No, not exactly UI5. Who is the engine? Who is the component of UI5 runtime? Who is the one? Renderer. Perfect answer. Is the renderer of the UI5 runtime component engine who created this runtime HTML, who created this HTML, because browser only understand HTML. Are you guys clear what's happening? Next time you see any Fury application, just try to imagine in your mind, इस डेवलपर ने कुछ कोड लिखा होगा जिसे रेंडरर ने डॉम बना दिया. Clear everyone? Somebody have written some code which was then ultimately converted by renderer to an equivalent HTML code. Is that clear to everyone how it work? Okay, that's behind the scene how it's happening. Okay, everything is getting converted to an equivalent HTML and CSS code by renderer. So that's our button. But now the biggest disadvantage here, this code is not reusable. Okay, this code is not reusable. Reason being, point one, this function, if I have to write another button, I have to again repeat the same function. So to make increase of our reusability, we move towards MVC architecture. Whenever we developing the UI5 application, we always have to build an MVC based application. MVC stands for Model View Controller Architecture. You might have heard about it, or you might have seen it, you might have talked about it, you might have read about it. This is also the design pattern which is used to build any UI application. Okay, any UI application in this world, is all modern UI application in this world are all built using MVC. If you worked with WebDyn Pro or BSP technology in the past, you might have also worked with MVC already. Knowingly, unknowingly, you were working with MVC. If any one of you worked with WebDyn Pro or BSP ever, you were working on MVC actually. So what is MVC? MVC is a design pattern. What is a design pattern? Design pattern provides solution, a common solution to a common software problems. Okay, a common solution to a common software problem. Don't you think the problem which you face somebody else is not facing? Many times you might have thought about creating a object of a class and you were confused where to create object of a class, isn't it, guys? Many times you wanted to create object of a class and you were confused which file, which program, which include, which module I should create the object of the class, right? So these are all the common problems which software industry faces. And to these common problems, there were common solutions which are known as design patterns. If you want to become an architect or associate architect, you must know design patterns. You must know. They are not specific to a programming language. However, they are more specific to object oriented rules in order to make sure that we address to a common problem with a common solution, which is widely accepted. There are lots of design patterns. There are broad categories: structural, behavioral, and there's one more. So there are broad categories of design pattern. If you want to learn design pattern, if you want to become an architect, I have a course for you. It's called BAP Objects. That course is available on my website. In this course of UI5, I'm giving you complimentary 4 videos on just basic oops. But if you want to go deep dive inside design pattern, want to become an architect, I have a very unique course called ABAP Objects, which was recorded kind of 4 5 years back, but yet those concepts are valid. In this, I have taught variety of design patterns: factory, abstract factory, com, facade, decorator. Then we have a template design pattern. So lots of design patterns are taught here in context of oops abap, along with oops abap, which will help you to become an architect in your company. Very powerful course. If you want to become an architect, try to target this course. This has all the design patterns covered with the UML notation and diagrams, with the sequence diagrams, how to build an effective application, how to design an application, because architect is more about designing rather than you doing coding. You get that coded by somebody else, but you design it right. So this course covers about that unique topics, and I challenge today no else trainer would cover these topics in context of a map about design pattern. You will find design pattern videos on internet, basic design pattern videos, but in context of oops app, it's covered in this course. Coming back, so design patterns are about solving common problems with a common solution. And one of the design pattern which addresses best practice to create an application which has create an application which has UI involved. So whenever there is a UI involved, whenever there is a user interface, a screen comes into picture, at that point of time, MVC is a default choice of design pattern which you should use. What MVC contains? Okay. It's very easy. If you were ever never able to understand MVC pattern, today you will understand pretty easily. What is the abstract of whole of engineering? Whole of engineering क्या सीखा पूरा engineering में? Any subject you take: mechanical, electrical, electronics, digital electronics, communications, analog communication, digital communication, anything, audio, video, computer science, any subject you take, what is the abstract of engineering? What is the overall abstract of engineering? Any subject you take, it's input, output, processing, and data, isn't it? Two-stroke combustion engine first year, four-stroke combustion engine first year, mechanical engineering. Input is the fuel, output is energy. Computer science, input is your keyboard input or mouse input via user interface. Processing is done by CPU. Data is stored in hard disk and RAM. and output comes on back on screen, right? Any subject you take, antenna engineering, applied electronics, MOSFET, metal oxide, field effect transistors, 741 operational amplifiers, 555 timer IC, 8084 microprocessor, any subject you take. I'm from electronics background. Flip flops, JK flip flop, T flip flop, S flip flop, anything, vending machines, whatever you design in engineering, circuit diagram, anything you design, the overall, everything, any subject of engineering, input, output, data, and processing. So, input, output, processing, and data. Is that clear, everyone? That's MVC design pattern, guys. That's MVC design pattern actually. Input, output is your view, is your user interface, where user will input the data and user will get the output. Processing is your controller. This is where the complete code is getting processed. All your methods, reusable functionality, your application logic, your validation logic all goes in controller. Data is your model. This could be persisted or it could be transient. Transient means like internal table. It exists only as lifetime of your program, or it could be persistent like OData, which persist in ECC system. That's your data. Is that clear? Input, output, processing, and data. If you remember this, you can remember MVC, Model View Controller. Clear, everyone? Model View Controller architecture. So if ever user want to see something, where will you put? If you want to put a control like button, which section of MVC you will put your button? Perfect answer. You will put in input, output. Your button will be here. When you want to write a functionality for this button, when I click on this button, what should happen? Where will you write that functionality of the button? Where will you write? You will write that in controller. Perfect answer. And whenever you want to fetch some data or you want to process the data, where does the data resides? It resides in the model. So this is your data store, and you want to read write data, you're going to work with this. Clear, everyone? So what happens is, whenever user does an activity on the user interface, this activity will creates an event. So an event gets created. This event is then sensed by controller, and in controller you have an event handler method. This event handler method will have all the necessary code. And now if this event handler method needs some data, it makes a request to the model, and model, then suppose you want to change the data, so it makes a request to the model, and model notifies that the change was done. So model says yes, the change was done, thank you so much, I made the change. And then finally your output, your result will be sent back to the user interface. Is that clear, everybody? MVC architecture, how it works. A view creates an event. It's sensed by the processing engine, which is your controller. Controller has an event handler. If there is a need, if there is a there is a need to go to the data changes or data read, then it goes to model. Otherwise, model not required. Sometimes you can create an application without a model at all. Static application, if you want to create, no model is required, only processing and view is enough. So now once the data is changed, it notifies the data is changed, and then it also sends the result back to the view. Is that clear, everyone? The flow of MVC architecture, how MVC architecture works. You will see these things in system, don't worry, we'll see it in the system, creating a view, creating a controller, all that thing we'll see it in the system. Now next important thing, if you don't want a processing on the data, if you don't want processing on the data, do you really need to go via this path? Do you really need to go via this long route? If you don't want processing of data, you just want to display the data, and you just want to display the data on the screen, do you really need to take this highway, which is a long route, or is there any shortcut which you see on this screen? On my screen, do you see a shortcut, a short route which can decrease your travel time by, rather than going this route, is there any short route which you can see? Perfect. This is a tunnel which you can create. A tunnel will shorten your travel time. You take this shortcut. This is bypassing this controller and directly creating a tunnel between the view and the model so that they can exchange the data with itself. Yes, guys, that's possible. Can you tell me this tunnel name? In technical terms, what is this? Those who worked with WebDinpro, they can tell easily. Where you create something between the context and the view in WebDinpro. Have you ever taken my WebDinpro training? No, it's not called pipe. What do you call that process in WebDinpro when you connect your context with the view?
Binding.
Very good answer. It's called binding. Perfect answer. You worked with WebDinpro. Yes, that's the same concept. It's called data binding or it's called binding, where you connect your view with the model directly so that they can exchange the data. If there is no intermediate processing required, you don't need to go to the controller at all. The view and the model can exchange the data directly with the help of binding, or also known as data binding. Are these concepts clear? Where do you write your processing logic? Where will your data resides? What is your user interface? Now coming quickly, the types of these objects which we have. So how many types of views we have in SAP UI5? We have JavaScript views, we have XML views, we have HTML views, and we have JSON views. Controller is always and always JavaScript because that's the only programming language which browser supports. No other programming language, only JavaScript you can use to create a controller. Models, types of model: JSON model, resource model, XML model, resource model, and OData model. Okay, these are all the types of models we have in SAP UI5. These are all the types of models. Controller is always JavaScript and views MVC. Now you will ask Anuba, which one is used real time? Guys, in terms of model, we okay, first of all, let's categorize this model. Okay, we will discuss that in models chapter, maybe more in detail. But if you ask me which one is used most, 10% of apps are created using GIS models. They're too old apps. Those are coded little, early days of UI5. XML view is used 90%. I would say today new apps, whatever is getting created, 99% for new of the apps, they are all using XML views. So our main intention focus will be to learn XML views. HTML views 0%. However, I'll show you one example how to create them. They are 0% today. It's my open guarantee to you, इन दोनों को ignore भी कर दो, कोई problem नहीं. If you can ignore them conveniently, no problem, because not a single project use these two types of views. JS 100% is the controller is all coded in 100% in JS. Then in terms of models, I would say this model is used almost in 80% of the applications. This is almost 0%. We don't use much. This one almost 100% of application use this model, and also real-time applications always use this model 100%. So that's how also the percentage of, so here it's out of 100 how much percentage of views are created. Here it's like what is the probability of using a model in a single application. In a typical single application, we have all the three types of these models used: resource, JSON, and OData. Almost all three models we use in every single app. We can create multiple models together, so that's possible. So that's about the types and how much percentage is being used. So now you know what should be a focus area. When I'm teaching views, what should be the focus area for views for you? Anyone? Which view you should spend most of your attention and time? XML views. In which view format you will be coding them? XML views you should be coding. Now the question comes, what is XML, right? We are ABAPers, right? Don't forget that we are ABAPers. What is XML? We will discuss what is XML. Don't feel panic just by these names. I will discuss every single thing for you. Now, just for curiosity, one test question: what is JSON stands for? Interview question. Let's see who can answer. What is JSON stands for? Anyone? What's the full form of JSON? JavaScript Object
Script
Notation.
object
Perfect
notation.
answer. Right. It's called JavaScript Object Notation. Very good answer. Those who answered, very good. Those who could not, please look at my previous PPT. Please look at previous classes so that you can answer those questions as well. So model view controller, is the architecture clear? In tomorrow's class we will create our first MVC application. I will also start discussing about SAP UI5 SDK, because this question is another important question. Anubhav, how do I know there is a text property? How do I know there is a press event? How do I know there is a button class? How do you know them, right? So there has to be some place which we can use reference as a documentation to know what are all the properties it has, what are all the events it has. So these things we will be discussing also in upcoming days in detail. But right now our first goal will be to convert this app into MVC application, writing an MVC application, learning quickly the types of views, how to create different types of views, and working with controller, and then slowly move to the scaffolding template, move to the UI5 SDK where you can find the documentation, all those things slowly and steadily. No heavy dose of antibiotic. Slowly and slowly we will go learn each step by step everything. Time for your questions. I'm done for the day. Thank you so much for the class. Any questions before we close? Anyone?
Hi, Anu. This is Srikanth here.
Yes, please.
This SRC source name you already put in because you have to know the things that HTTPS, SCP, HANA on demand.
Mhm.
But from the web, we can show. Could you just show how we to find out?
So just search for SAP UI5 Bootstrap. Right now, I'm just showing a quick, easy technique just to answer your question. Of course, we will be learning more in detail about where can you find the details. But right now, I'm just showing a quick, easy way of doing it. So you see a lot of these blocks. Maybe this one, bootstrapping, is go inside. And here inside this, you will find, and now this may lead to more confusion for some of you, but it's okay. Let me just show you where can you find. And now you see variant for bootstrapping from content delivery network. Okay, so some people call it as content distribution network, or some call it as content delivery network. Just go inside and you will find here, you see SAP from SAP HANA Cloud Platform, SAP HANA Cloud Platform, and you see HTTPS SAP UI5 HANA on demand.com resources this. Now this is why I did not wanted to show this, because this is leading to more confusion. What is Open UI5 then? Right, I will discuss about this in next session. This is a heavy dose of antibiotic. Let's ignore it right now. You can see, however, this is the code. Clear? This is where I can find variant of bootstrapping for content delivery network. So temporarily it answer your question. Of course, deep learning we're gonna do in upcoming days. Clear,
Thanks,
everyone?
Anu.
All right, thank you. I'll just put this link.
Hello, Anubhav.
Yes, please.
Without internet, how to find out how to run this application in library?
All
If I
right.
now am
So for that, we will also discuss a concept of Neo App JSON. So right now, I have not introduced that concept of Neo App JSON here. I will show you in upcoming days how to use Neo App JSON, where what we need to do, we need to tell, hey, please don't load it from internet. Rather than please load this resource from local computer. Local computer as in from WebID itself. Yeah. So your WebID already has this UI5 framework inbuilt. So you can just give that path and say, hey, please load from web IDE. Don't load from internet. That's what will do the magic. You can load it from from local computer, from web ID itself, without going internet. We'll see that in upcoming days.
thank you.
Okay.
No, there is one query regarding jQuery.
Yes, please.
Hey,
Uh,
Anubhav.
as
Yeah, 1 second.
browser
Let him complete.
understands
Wait.
JavaScript,
Let
Quick question.
Santosh complete. Yes, Santosh.
yeah, as browser understands JavaScript
Quick
only,
question.
how come jQuery is more is interpreted by the browser?
Yes, jQuery is not interpreted by browser as long as you don't download the jQuery JavaScript file, jQuery library. Once you reference the jQuery library, it automatically brings all the necessary code into the browser, which is actually behind the scene a JavaScript code. Since browser understands JavaScript, whatever commands you're writing is going to the jQuery library. jQuery library is converting the code to the JavaScript code and submitting it to the browser automatically.
Anubhav, this is Rohit here. First and foremost, great training. Thank you for that. In the code from line number 11 to 17, right? So if I understood it correctly, more on that in the upcoming classes, right?
So this is something this code already we saw in demo also. What we will now be doing in upcoming class, we will be separating this code. This processing logic will go with controller, this piece of code. Okay. And this button creation will go with view. And here in the index HTML to test, we will create the object of the view here actually. And that view we will be embedding in the body of HTML. Rather than directly adding a button, we will add a view here. So we will be creating a view. This button will go inside the view. This processing logic will go inside the controller. That's tomorrow's class. We will do it.
Hanubhav, how do we define the global variables and the local definitions in UI5?
So that's something once we go to controller chapter, that time I will show you. Here it does not make sense to define a global local thing, but in controller when we will go, I will show you guys.
Okay.
Hi Anubhav, Alok here.
Yes, hello.
I have question regarding jQuery. So yesterday actually I'm trying to do that image hover effect. So I'm trying to directly, instead of any event handler, I'm trying to call mouse hover effect directly in the external JS file. I'm not able to directly call that. I have to use something else. Directly I'm not able to use with tag, like image tag. I would directly use the hover effect, which is I'm not able to do that.
I did not get. Is it okay if you can drop me an email with the steps, or you can also check the solution. Already the solution is posted into our training blog. You can see for every exercise, you guys are really doing great. The solution which somebody who is providing me first. So many of you are very energetic and sending me emails continuously. I'm mesmerized by that. But the person who sends me first the right answer, I am putting their answer into here. So I have already posted the solution for this rotate thing, which was yesterday came to me, and I forgot to mention name this time, but here is the solution already in our training blog, so you can reference this. Yes, please.
Yes, I have one question regarding development part. When I'm developing, sometimes my CSS folder or JS folder is not working perfectly. Is there any dependency or is there any configuration needs to? Can you?
Sometimes it is not working. Sometimes it is working that I cannot solve. That's something your local computer issue, which could be performance issue with your own computer or internet issue. I am not really sure, because sometimes thing is something which I cannot look into.
Can you see my screen? Can I share?
Yeah, but can you please explain why sometimes it's working? Then it
just yesterday and day before yesterday, I'm trying to CSS and JS query, but it's not the working. The page not loaded or CSS file not loaded, JS not loaded folder.
No, but
yesterday I solved that issue.
This could be an issue with Orion exe, because if sometime it's working, sometime not working, then definitely it's an Orion issue. Probably what you may be doing is you are not restarting your Orion timely basis. So daily when you start your work, close the Orion and restart the Orion, refresh your web ID again. Then it will work perfectly. Okay.
All path is fine, but yesterday also I finally got it. Everything is loaded in backend.
Yes, so that's an Orion issue. Sometimes you have to reload the Orion again and again.
Okay. Thank you.
Just close the Orion and restart the Orion server. The best way also, another thing is, if you have good speed on internet, since you are in Bangladesh, maybe I'm not sure how the connectivity there, you can also use SAP UI5, SAP Web ID from cloud platform directly.
We don't have currently license issue. That's why.
That's why. So better use Web ID local only then.
Yeah.
All right.
Anubhav, one last question.
Yes, please.
Actually, is there any way where we can know all the notations, like especially the CSS, the way we write is different when we write in inline, when we write in internal, when we write in a JavaScript, when we are
W3C
calling style.
says all the answers. In W3C,
Yeah,
you can see everything what you need.
that's the only way.
That's the only place. I mean, this is the, I mean, if somebody else is coming and telling you something else, don't believe, because this is the company which is originating it. Okay. This is the company which is originating Believe me or not, I have also learned from W3C. I have myself learned from W3C, guys. Yeah.
Okay.
So you
And
find
also this
everything.
control space.
Mhm.
Yeah, in jQuery, the control space, some like it is not giving all the possible options, especially in jQuery.
jQuery won't
Uh,
give. jQuery won't give. JavaScript only will give. jQuery will not give. Control space option jQuery will not come actually. Okay. For
we have
that
to
you
depend
have to
on
refer
those.
jQuery tutorials here on W3C. So you see jQuery tutorials are also there on W3C for that.
Okay. Thank you, Anupam.
This is one of the best site I've ever come across. They teach like, they're teaching kids. You see so many examples they give. I have, when I was learning like 6 years back, these things, I tried almost every example from here. So you click on this, try it yourself. Just click on that. It opens a nice editor and you see here it comes. And now you can make the change and I say, hello world, hello UI5 dev, and you can say run. It immediately changes on the right, side by side, you know side by side, doc left, doc right. This is how I got an idea to also keep my code side by side. On the left we develop, on the right we see output. So this makes it very efficient for a developer to learn. So almost every example you can try out yourself on W3C. You see a lot of exercises are there, but that's really not needed. That's really not needed. Yeah, you need to be smart, guys, also at the same time, to where to invest your time. So whatever, as I mentioned, I covered on HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, done. वो सीखो, आगे बढ़ो, उस पे अटके मत रहो. If you keep staying there, then you will not be able to focus and on interesting things which are more important for you as a UI5 developer. Try to understand context. You are not going to become a website designer. So if you want to become a web developer, then these things, deep dive going inside them, each of these things, syntaxes makes more sense. But whatever I taught you, if you just understand those things and proceed and understand the overall how system is behaving, working, the overall behaviors of it, then it's okay. It's good. You don't need to really go deep inside. Okay.
Yeah, from
Because
today
our
class without
job is not
no
to become
knowing.
a web developer, website developer. Our job is to become a UI5 developer. That is the reason. So if you want to become a complete web developer, then Python भी सीखना पड़ेगा, Bootstrap भी सीखना पड़ेगा. You see, Bootstrap framework is there, PHP भी सीखना पड़ेगा. I didn't taught all that because they are not at all in our context. The things which are in our context, only that much we take it and we proceed forward, so that we can spend more time on interesting things which are important for you as a UI5 developer. But these things makes your foundation ready. If your foundation is ready, if you understood overall concept of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, done, good. Proceed to the next level. Don't stuck there. Don't stuck there. Once upon a time, I remember one of my friend, a school friend, he has done BCom. Okay, BCom, Bachelor of Commerce. I was at that time going in engineering. Do you believe he was working harder than me? He was working harder and harder than me. The time I used to study like 4 hours, 5 hours, he used to study like 12 hours, 18 hours. He topped the university with 98 percentage BCom. Okay, he topped the university. Day and night इतना struggle करके पढ़ाई किया. 98% he topped the entire university BCom. When he got into the job market, 8,000 रुपए का job मिला, 8,000 rupees a month. So what is the moral of this story? The moral of the story is, you should also know where to invest your time. You need to be smart enough to decide and take a call what gives you the maximum benefit of studying something. Okay, what gives you the, you need to be relevant. If somebody say today I will learn ABAP or VB.NET, VB सीखूंगा मैं जाके, सीखो भाई, कौन रोक रहा है, VB में चैंपियन बन जाओ. But who will ask VB now? You will not get any package, good package in VB. You can become a champion in HTML, but is HTML sufficient enough to get a great package, a great edge to your career? Not necessary. Not necessary. But foundation के लिए अच्छा है. ज़्यादा time नहीं spend करो, सीखो आगे बढ़ो, सीखो आगे बढ़ो. This is what you should do. You should not spend more and more time. उस पे अटके मत रहो. Okay. And in fact for UI5 सीखो, ABAP और नाना पे बढ़ो. ABAP और नाना सीखो, Fiori Advance, jump in like this. Some people say, Anubhav, will I get lifetime access of your videos? This means you just want to stick to lifetime on UI5. टेक्नोलॉजी बंद भी हो जाएगा तो भी आप UI5 करना चाहते हो. Doesn't help. Your attitude should be, I will learn, finish, move to the next level. Learn, finish, move to the next level. Learn, finish, move to the next level. That should be your attitude if you want growth in the company. It should not be, I want to lifetime learn UI5. Which means you are clearly telling your intentions that you don't want to learn and proceed and grow further. You don't want to expand your learning horizons. You want to stick to one thing just to earn your livings. उतना ही करना चाहते हो जितना, जिससे पैसा आए घर में और घर खर्चा निकल जाए. You don't want to go beyond. You don't want to break yourself. Tomorrow I'll show you another interesting story about it. Thank you so much for today's class. For more questions, please drop me an email. Thank you so much and goodbye.